Let me start at the beginning. In the beginning, in keeping with the benevolent capitalism of the late 1900s, Judson Moss Bemis, who was born in 1833, built the finest auditorium right here between Nashville and Memphis. It featured things that not even auditoriums in Nashville and Memphis had. We'll tell you more about that later. But he insisted that his employees were afforded the best that he could afford. So from the time he left New York State to the farm in Illinois, he migrated then to the north, to Chicago, with his brother-in-law, and got into the bag business in St. Louis, where he made his mark and married, quote, a well-bred woman from Massachusetts. And her name was Alice Cogswell, and he married at the age of 33. After their marriage, he was constantly around cultural affairs. Some say that she was his contact to the bankers in Boston that financed his empire. Though he died in 1921, about a year before the opening of this auditorium, he was in on the planning of this complete work, and along with his son, Albert Farwell, who had a degree from MIT, and also Andrew Hepburn, who was one of the ones that worked on Colonial Williamsburg's restoration. Judson Moss and Albert Farwell and Hepburn's influence can be seen throughout this building. Meanwhile, back in Bemis in the fall of 1920, it was decided to put an auditorium, a mill office, and the Bemis Inn through the slides. That's the Bemis Inn right there. Hotel. It was a real dark picture and very hard to project, but that's it. They put the three buildings in a cluster around the grassy area, planted with small shrubs to be known as Mill Park. The spot is right out in front of our barber shop out here, the little grassy spot. That's Mill Park. And the auditorium where it sits now was taken. There was two houses sitting here. One of them was the Schindall house. Let's see, can you go to the next slide? There we go. And then the next slide. Now that is the artist that's the where the inn was supposed to sit. In that little circle there. Now go to the next one. Okay, this is Emily Schindall's house. And just before she was 14 years of age, she told me about it. When she was 90 years old, she's having a 90th birthday party, and she told me about how they moved her house. They disconnected the water and the electric lines and tore out the base of the fireplace. And then they put it on rollers, which was 5-foot sections of telephone poles, and had horses pull it down Missouri Street, about halfway down on the left between B and C Street. And actually it's between the double alley, if you know where the double alley is. It's now house number 111, North Missouri Street. That's her house. Next slide. Whoop, let's Emily. Okay, just leave her up there. During the move, all the furniture was still inside the house, including the piano, which she was learning to play. like any kid, she wanted to be in the house while they were moving it. And that might have been fun for me. But she practiced her piano as they worked moving it down the street. And when she quit, they insisted that she play again and again. For about a half a day there, it took to move down the street. They had her practicing piano, so she got a good day's worth of practice. Now this building is a little over 49 feet wide and 128 feet long. Has 6,300 square feet. And the basement walls are very interesting because they're 2 feet thick of poured concrete. The upper walls are 4 and 5 bricks thick, about 1.5 feet thick, covered with stucco. This roof is covered with tile. Did anybody see those tile laying in the chairs on the ends? Made out of clay. They weigh almost 3 pounds apiece. Just a minute, I lost my place here. Oh yeah. And the roof of this building has 40,000 pounds of roofing on it. Clay tile, 40,000 pounds. And next picture, do we have a picture of the theater? Oh, it's little. But that's construction during the very beginning of this building. And next slide, it's a little better. That shows the side. And I believe that's it. Oh yeah, the next one, yeah, the artist picture of the museum itself. Or we're calling it auditorium tonight, aren't we? The theater seated 850 people. And next slide. Oh, next. Okay, there we go. That's a picture with all the seating in there in 1922. Next slide. This is the balcony area, close up. You can see that, and right behind it is the place where they projected the movies through the wall, through the little holes in the wall. The balcony was a favorite place for the teams, kind of wait for everybody. And then the next picture. This is a picture from the other end showing the stage. And it has the orchestra pit, so forth. They called it the orchestra pit, if you had an orchestra, but they just had a piano most of the time. And they played it during silent movies. And when they had silent movies, they would provide sheet music to the piano player up front, and she would play, I say she, I guess nearly all of them were, would play the music to the silent movie and establish the mood for the movie. Let's see, next. Oh, there's a better close-up shot of the piano. Yeah. Okay, next. Okay, let me hold it right there. This is the original ticket booth. If you'll notice, there's a guard, you might call it, right in front of the ticket booth. The ticket booth, it seems to be that it was loose on the floor, but that guard kept people from running into it and bumping it over. And so you can go, as you go out the door, you can see 2 spots in the floor where that guardrail was sitting. Next, this is across the foyer with a ticket booth and looking in the east door. Next, now that's the screen that they had in 1922. It's very small, about 10 feet to the top, but it didn't start till about 3, so it was about 7 feet high. And that was the original, what we call the slant screen for the theater. And if you walk up here, you can still see the brass plates in the floor where that screen was mounted, and they're still up here. Next. Now this is a picture in 1922 of the original silent movie projector, and it was taken out later when they came in with sound. But in the beginning, they didn't even have light bulbs to make it project. They had carbon arc, 2 pieces of carbon about the size of a pencil at 90-degree angle, and they fed electricity to it. I don't know how much electricity there was, but quite a bit. And when the electricity went across there, it caused a bright light, kind of like a welding torch, electrical welding torch, and it illuminated, had provided illumination for the movie, and they run the film between it and projected it. The first movie was 1922, and it was named In Old Kentucky. And when Brother Greer, preacher at the Pentecostal church, was alive, he told me about it. And the plot was they had a racehorse and they had a love affair going at the same time. So it's kind of like today, they always have to have 2 or 3 plots. But he remembered it because it was about the racehorse and so forth. And a young producer named Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R, was in charge. He produced it. And later he became part of Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and we know it now as MGM. And it was 7 minute long, 7 reels, 10 minutes long, or 70 minutes long was how long it was. It kept them busy up in the booth, just changing between the projectors. They had 2 projectors. One would run while they loaded the next one. So they knew how to do a continuous movie that way. If you watch an old movie, you'll see little white spots pop up on your film sometime on TV. And what that is, that's a warning to the guy that's running the projector. It's time to change reels. Get ready. And but nowadays they've spliced them all together and made it digital and so forth. But that don't mean anything now. But back in those days it did. Now skipping forward 36 years, we see the projection booth in 1958. It had the 1929 version of the, it was new in 1929. It was a talking projector. And when they started with sound. This 1929 projector is now right over here on the west wall on display. And in August of 1958, they sold this movie projector to a guy named Clark Shively, who ran the Jackson Drive-In movie. And I think they spelled it with an X, J-A-X-O-N, Jackson Drive-In movie. Mm-hmm. And he bought it from Bemis. Then later, I think that kind of failed, and he opened up the Princess Theater in Lexington, Tennessee. And he used the same projector from Bemis in the Princess Theater in Lexington. And his son, Preston Shively, in December of 2002, came to me and well, actually, we were working out together at Heart Rehab Center at the hospital. And we got talking about Bemis naturally. And he said, I've got the projector. So he brought it by the house and donated it to the museum. 44 years after it left Bemis, we got it back. It's sitting over here. The last movie projected. I don't know if I have the slide right now or not, Kathy. No, that's looking from the balcony down at the side. And the chandelier, which I wish we could have a better shot of. We've got a better copy, but not in this presentation. But they had about 8 different real nice chandeliers that were hanging from the ceiling. Okay, let's do the next one, see what we come up with. Okay, let's go ahead and tell about this. The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was the last movie, and Ab Fry, if anybody knows Ab Fry, you'll understand what I'm saying. He was taking money at the front door, and he told Richard Eskew, and he probably told everybody that said anything, he said, "We're not taking money, Bemis don't need it." And so he let everybody in to the music, to the theater free at the last show. I bought the DVD a few years ago of the 50-Foot Woman, and sometimes we'll play it for the program for us. In fact, Kathy's wanting to know about a program. We might could work out something where we could show that DVD of the 50-Foot Woman and just show how corny. It's kind of like watching an old Lone Ranger movie. You ever watch any of those? Anyway, it'd be fun to compare now and then. Every year from 1922 to 1956, for 35 years, they had the graduation in this building. That is the 1945 graduating class right there. And back then, it was a 3-night affair. It started on Sunday afternoon, and they had a religious or inspirational type program on Sunday afternoon for the graduates. And then on Monday, next slide, they would have a play, and this is a play that the seniors put on, and I think that was in the 30s there. I didn't get the date on it. And then the the third night was actually when they presented the program. I mean, their anyway, they got it. Diploma. I couldn't get the word diploma. They got their diplomas the third night, so it was a 3-night affair. Next picture. A lot of times they would have an informal picture of the class also, and this is one of those. And they liked the front steps because it was basically the newest thing in town, and it was a pretty pink building back then. And then let's see, go to the next slide. Now, at one point, back in the 30s, they thought every building that could support an ivy had to have vines growing all over it. And Bemis was one of them that had that. Now, right there is a brass plate that says Bemis Auditorium. And during World War II, they wanted all the scrap metal, especially brass, for bullets. And they used steel for other things, but brass was really valuable. And Bemis donated that sign to the scrap drive. And I don't know how many bullets it made. Okay, Bemis, the auditorium has 3 distinct basements, and I call them the north, the center, and the south. Next. Now this is the steps right over here to my right, and behind the curtain there's a set of steps that goes to the basement, and it goes into a place. It did have 3 rooms. There were 3 dressing rooms down there, and now the dividers are taken out, and it's one big room. But at one point, we had traveling actors coming from New York every summer to put on shows, and we have a few pictures of them back there on the big picture board. But it lasted about 10 years until 1933, and then the Depression hit and slowed things down. But Mary Frances Fry told me that in 1937, the famous Helen Keller came to Bemis, and she spoke from this stage right here. And they had she played the piano and spoke an inspirational speech, and it was for the school, everybody in school. All the schools were right over here. It was even before J.B. Young, which was built like in 40. They all walked over here, and she entertained them. I'm sure she used the dressing room in the basement. And a lot of people were graduates down there. They put their robes and so forth on, and they left graffiti. So you can see that. And somebody, me and Jeff was down there one day, and we found one that said Elvis Presley, 1952. So he went online and found Elvis' signature, and it wasn't anything like that. So somebody was just having fun, but they signed Elvis in there, and they probably did it in 1957 when they did it. But anyway, next we have the center basement, and you go down the same set of steps to the dressing room area, and then you step over a concrete barrier, and it's the section from right here at the stage all the way back to the foyer. That's the center section, and it's dirt, no concrete floor there. And in fact, whenever we first started meeting here, we had a humidity problem, which didn't get solved till just recently. But we stopped a lot of humidity by covering the basement with the dirt basement with a black plastic, and that helped a lot. And next picture, if you'll notice there's two bases under those posts. One of them is a little tall and the other one's short. Originally, there was just half as many support columns under this floor as there is now. In 1967, when they started using it as a warehouse, they put those extra ones in those right there, and so that it would support bales of cotton. This thing was filled with cotton. They told me it was 3 bales high. Each bale was 500 pounds, so 1,500 pounds, 1,500, 15, all over this whole building. Quite a bunch of weight, so they had to put new supports under there. Okay, next one. Now you can't tell too much about it. I thought I had a better picture than that. But that is a stack of tile like those on this roof. And that's sort of the leftovers. Next. No, we went backwards, didn't you?
No.
Oh, it's tile, yeah. Okay, that's the ridges and corners and stuff like that that were left over. But at one time, all those tiles were stored in the horse barn over here over on Butler Street. And in the stalls, it's packed in there. Each stall had, when we got the prisoners, take them and put them in what we call wraparound pallets. And we shipped 2 flatbed trailers, loads of these tile to the manufacturer in Chicago, Illinois. Okay, next. That's one of the pictures of it loading up right there. And flatbed. Next. Here's how they put them on there with a tractor, put them up in there. But we had 2 truckloads of those things. And I can't remember, I was going to ask Anita if she could find out how much how much the check was, but she probably don't know where it is. But okay, next. Now this is under the floor plumbing. That's all new stuff. I say new, it's 2008. That's still 12 years old or 13 years old. But that's what's under here. So we have bathrooms, we got 3 bathrooms, and a kitchenette, which we'll show you in a minute. The theater to warehouse was brought about by the Bemis company when they designated Bemis as their central warehousing location. This also caused the tearing down of the Y and the skating rink. And in their place, they built a big tilt slab cotton warehouse, which I didn't take a picture. Whenever the auditorium was being converted from a theater to a warehouse, they had to raise this floor to make it level. And this was accomplished by Vernon Lawrence, Larry Lawrence's daddy. He was the chief carpenter at the time. And I talked to Vernon about it, and he said the floor itself was not attached to the walls. Most all floors in a house come off the wall, but this one was not. It was freestanding, and made it lots easier to raise it. And he put about 100 screw jacks lined up all across, next row, and under the floor. And he was in charge of telling each row how much to turn their little jack. And his floor he said it just squeaked and cracked and done everything as it came up, because it was hitting the walls and coming up between the 2 walls. But it worked. He said it took him a month, and he had 6 people working every day, jacking this thing up. At the same time, when they were fixing the floor, making it level, they put in a sprinkler system, which is all up here. Sometimes I wish we didn't have it, and sometimes we gotta have it though. But they put the sprinkler system in the attic, in the main floor, and in the basement. So we have a lot of water, which can be in here, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's go to the south basement next. This is the steps going down to the south basement. You have to go outside the building, past the handicap ramp, and then next, you go through this old door that needs painting. But that's the entrance to the south basement, and I call it the ugly door. Next, and this is a new water heater that was added when we made this into a museum. Next, now this is a 1922 vacuum cleaner, central vacuum cleaner. Down the center aisle, about every 8 feet, there was a hole in the floor that run to this central vacuum cleaner. It had a flip top, metal top that flipped around. And when a movie was over with, they would sweep the popcorn to the aisle, center aisle, turn on the vacuum cleaner, and start pouring popcorn down down the hole. And then they had it downstairs. I guess they fed it to the mice, I don't know. But anyway, they did have a central vacuum cleaner. Next, we was talking about the high power projector that had the carbon arcs that created a big light for the projector. This is where it actually was kind of headquartered. Is that as wide as it's going to be? I guess it is. It's about 4 times that wide on the original slide. But anyway, it was all open. You could get killed right there. Okay, next slide. Now you can't tell a whole lot about it. That's a fan that sits on the floor, and it's about 6 feet high, and it was used to pull air. Next, and here's the belts that turned it. Had a big motor, and it's cut off too. I don't know what happened to our slide, but there's a big motor that turned that big fan, and it pulled cool air out of the tunnel. Next. Yeah. This is the ductwork that carried it all over the building. Next. These things right here, you can see them all along the wall. There's 13 on each side of the building that have this design. Next. Some of them are tall, some of them are a little short, but that's where the air came in, cool air. And also, in the winter time, each one of those things had a radiator, and they provided hot air. Hot water circulated through them, and then the air rose. It wasn't blowing in the wintertime. It just gravity fed or heat rises. It came in through those ducts into the building. There's 26 of them. Next. Is that the? Oh, that's supposed to. Right there is the. Start right there. That's the bottom. Here is. That's the tunnel that goes from this building over across it. And it carried electric lines and underground utilities. And it also carried, like I said, the steam pipe for the radiators in the winter, and kept everything warm. The steam came from the mill and was transported piped over here. Incidentally, the steam from the mill also heated 3 school buildings: the Methodist Church, the YMCA, and the company store. So that mill put out a lot of heat. And as you walk up the street, or you drive if you want to, Missouri Street back toward the post office, there's a grassy area between the sidewalk and the street. It's about this wide. It's not wide as normal like that. But beneath that, in that grassy area, is where the asbestos-covered pipes, which came from the mill, run to the company store. And when they worked on them, they didn't have to tear up the street or the sidewalk or anything. It was dirt. They just dug the dirt up and put a section of pipe in, and they could had made it easier to work. When I was in the 5th grade, Miss Pearson was my teacher, and when it got hot in the building, she would just open the window, because she didn't have enough strength in her hand to turn the knob on the radiator to turn it off. So she just opened the windows, and we just got used to them. If it got hot, we would open the windows and not turn the heat off. Like you could, but she couldn't. She couldn't turn it off. Talking about this tunnel again, it starts right under the doorstep up on the east front up here, and it goes 130 feet across the street, across Missouri Street, to right in front of the barber shop. And then it makes a 90-degree turn and goes 120 feet to the mill office across there. And then it makes a west turn and it goes 100 feet to where it used to be the mill basement, and it's 350 feet long. And in 1958, when this building was, theater was closed down, the tunnel was sealed off at the mill. So now, I think you can go from here, there, on over for about 300, for about, let's see, 120, 250 feet underground. Most people, though, that do take this, get in the tunnel, when they start to make that turn, they say that's far enough. It's kind of spooky in there. And if it's raining, it's muddy. And if it's nice weather like it is now, there might be spider webs all in your face. The first person is the only one who gets the spider webs. But it was it's another story. Better hurry up here. When they were building the drainage system from Missouri Street, they came out here in the street and they tried to run the pipe, and they run across something they couldn't get through, and they put all kind of tractors and jackhammers and everything, and it was that tunnel. The tunnel itself is about a foot thick of concrete, poured concrete. And so when they tried to run a pipe, they eventually discovered what it was, and they went down and took a jackhammer and made a hole about that big on both sides, and then run the pipe through the hole. And so when you're going down the tunnel, before you get to the first turn, there'll be a huge pipe right in your way, which you step over. Okay, we got another slide. Next slide. That's just looking down in the dark. It's not a good shot because it's about half as wide as it needs to be. Next. Well, yeah, that is really getting strong. What that is, that's a compressor that keeps the sprinkler system dry. There's no water in this sprinkler system until it needs it. And when it needs it, it overwhelms the compressor and water floods the whole system. So when we have a malfunction, they have to come out and drain every one of these pipes. And that's happened a lot of times. It usually happens around 2 o'clock in the morning when they call you to come down. The fire engine is on the way, and they're having a problem at the Bemis theater. They usually call it theater. But now let's see. Let's go back up. Now we've got one more shot there, and that's the pressure gauge and so forth. And it's just a bunch of big, heavy pipes that where the water first comes in, and then it's distributed through the different sections. Next. Oh man, that's an advertisement for the attack of the 50-foot woman, and she's tearing everything up. Next. Now, if you'll notice right here, most of you can remember there was a ramp when we first got it, and Richard Fisher likely wore a jackhammer completely out, getting it out because it was not filled in. It was concrete, 4 feet of concrete, and it took like 2 weeks to get that thing broke up. But this was the painters painting the building green back to pink. This attack of the 50-foot woman I was telling you about, that happened in mid-August of 1958. Gerald Ross used to come to every movie that was here, and he told me, he said it was sometime after school started. Then I talked to Aaron Long, who worked at the mill. He just moved here, and he moved here the last day of August. and started the first day of September, and he was getting ready that last week, and they told him that the last movie had just been shown in the theater. So him and Gerald kind of get things, they verify one another. Whenever the, let's see here. Okay, now we're gonna have to kind of move quick because there's not something to say about everything. We've got 10 slides here that show what I call the balcony area. This is the steps. If you'll notice, going up to the balcony, they're running horizontal. That's the steps on the west end. Next. Here's the steps on the east end. Now why they had different designs, I don't know. But there's a difference. And they ordered these steps from St. Louis, Missouri, prefabricated, so all they had to do was screw everything together. But that's the way you get up if you go up the east side. Next. This is some graffiti in the mop room where they had a little room about 3 foot square that had a great big deep sink. And there's some graffiti in there. And Katie Holloway is on there. I don't know if he's on that one or not. But Carnes Austin, somebody might know him. B.C. King, he's on there, maybe not on that wall, but there's 3 walls up there that have graffiti on it. Okay, next, here's somebody wrote something about Gone with the Wind.
And, dyslexic.
Next, Bobby Fischer, was that say 53 or 43?
43.
Yeah, okay, next. Oh yeah, it's so narrow I couldn't tell. What is in the balcony is a vent pipes for the air conditioning or heat, and we were going to use it for displays and so forth. And because the front edge of the balcony, which is a steel beam, is sitting on bricks, no steel to the ground, the people at powers that be said it wasn't strong enough to put anybody upstairs and just make it storage area. So we did. Next, this is another shot across this. Well, let me get it. This is the front edge of the balcony, and we just got stuff laying up there. Next, here we are. We got some trim work that went around these walls when we had some damage. We got a lot of trim work left over. And this is our stage, that's the stage where I'm standing out. That's me right there. Next. Okay, that's some other just duct work and so forth. Next. Now this, you can't tell, but there's a cabinet there. It's that big, I'm outlining there, that had it was used for movie reels. Bemis had a lot of their own movies that they kept and would play as fillers, from time to time. And I think it was Richard told me that when he was working here, they had like 50 different movies in that little rack right there. So, but usually they got what they was going to show for the week in the mail, and they would get it just in time to show. I guess you could depend on the mail back then. Next. Oh, this is in the attic. All you can see is just timbers, and that's what holds up that 40,000 pounds. They just got beams going every which way. In fact, I wrote the word up so that Robert would know which way to scan this thing to start with, because I couldn't hardly tell myself, and I took the picture. Next, and here's another shot of the woodwork up in the attic, and this is basically the floor, and you have to watch where you walk. You don't want to fall through. Next. Yeah, that's just more woodwork, yeah. Just showing you how complicated it is up in the attic, holding our 40,000 pounds off of our heads. Next. Now, this is stepping way forward. Some of you had never been back in the back over here, and this is our, what we call the kitchenette. We have a microwave, a sink, refrigerator, cabinets, even got a little restroom back there. That's what, and it's not as squished as it looks. It's what happened there, but next, this is the panels. Instead of having all that big stuff that I showed you down in the basement, this is the breaker boxes that we have right behind my left here. It's where the breaker boxes are. Next. Now, I wish you would come across, but that's Bill Holloman's drone shot of this theater. And it's, if you want a real good shot of it, see Kathy after the meeting and she'll say you're a fan. That will give you a real good shot of this thing. And let's see, is that it? Yeah. Okay, turn it on. In conclusion, the Bemis Historical Society was organized in February of '98, and there's 25 people at the Methodist Church, and we met there for 9 years and 10 months. But about 11 months after we started meeting there, we bought this auditorium from Mel Bratcher, who run the Jackson Storm Door place, and he was using it for a warehouse, a perfect warehouse. Didn't have to have a heat or nothing back then. And we paid him $10,000 for the way it looked then. And Travis Crouch, people in Bemis know him. He was a Bemis inside out. In fact, when he died, he had his funeral down here at Smith South. And before he went to the cemetery, they drove him around Bemis in the hearse around Bemis. And so he loaned us $10,000 to pay Mel Bratcher, and he financed it for the first year, and we got grant money after that. About a few months later, we applied for American Treasure status for this facility, and with leverage from Ronald Fisher, who lived in right across the river from Washington, D.C., and he loved getting in politics. He went across to the Congress, and he got us an earmark grant. Now, an earmark grant is something you can just get because somebody told you they needed the money. And Ronald told them we needed money in Bemis, and they gave us $197,000. And because we had the $197,000, then we qualified. That was seed money for city grants and the Tennessee Historical Commission grants, which Linda Higgins and Dickie Lake wrote for us. And we had a lady here, she was the wife of Judge Stegall. Her name was Barbara Stegall, and she was on the Historical Commission, Tennessee Historical Commission. And she used her leverage to get businesses to donate money to match the $197,000. And then we had cotton bowl donors that went to match it. And then we had major donors. We have a plaque back there for that. And then the other businesses just gave their time, like architects and so forth. Anyway, it ended up, the rehabbing of this building is $550,000. So we got quite an investment sitting here, and now our job is to maintain it. It's always something that we need to fix. The first Bemis Historical Society meeting was in December the 16th of '08, and that was coming up, well, it's already been 12 years, and so it's been a while. Any questions? 7:03. Thought I could do it at 7.
We turn it off now.
Yeah.